Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, audiophiles and music lovers. Today we'll be reviewing the Final D7000 headphones as part of our series on the best headphones over $1,000. I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's start with a product description. The Final D7000, you can see them here, is a wired open back over-the-ear headphone. The D7000 uses planar magnetic drivers, which means the drivers are relatively large and are driven over most of their surface area. This is in contrast to a standard dynamic driver where there's a cone and a voice coil that drives the cone in one particular place. Final adds some special sauce to the recipe here. They have a pinna, that's your outer ear, a pinna-aligned diffuser, which is aimed at creating a more spacious sound. And they use a magnetic system with a larger gap, air damping, and a single-ended design to allow more excursion. The point of this technology is to increase bass output and extension. The D7000s are rated at 89 dB per milliwatt and have a 50 ohm impedance. So there's some sacrifice of efficiency to gain the prospective benefits that I just rattled off. In practice, I had no trouble driving the D7000s with my reference DCS Lena headphone amp, but it's a pretty powerful amp, so your mileage may vary. And, as with all headphones, purchasers will want to check that they have the required grunt for their preferred listening levels. I tend to listen around 80 dB, and you may want to destroy your ears and listen at higher levels. The D7000 uses a magnesium housing, yielding a weight of 437 grams or just under 1 pound. As I've said before, this seems to be the weight of just about every headphone in this class. The D7000 seemed very comfortable, and I especially felt that the ear cups had well-judged pressure levels and used a material that felt soft and breathable. It's kind of a woven cloth. All right, let's talk about sound quality. Final is a Japanese company with a long history of making cartridges, amplifiers, speakers, earphones, and headphones. They seem to fit solidly in the artisanal part of the market, something Japanese audio companies tend to excel at. With the D7000, they've added a third member to their flagship line. Most of us are so accustomed to the good, better, best model of product lines that I was a bit thrown off, and you might be too, by Final seeming to have 3 flagships. But if one is a nuclear sub, one is an aircraft carrier, and one is a destroyer, I guess that makes sense. In any event, the D7000 seems to be positioned as the member of the line that works well on all kinds of music. As I alluded to before, Final seems to have been especially interested in bass that meets modern listener expectations. Overall, I think a lot of listeners would find that the D7000 gets its sonic profile pretty close to just right. The D7000 is on the warm side with weighty bass that has enough texture to satisfy. Combine that with a reasonably smooth mid-range and extended highs, and you have headphones that work well on many different kinds of music and with many different mastering goals behind the scenes. This is a fun headphone that lets you get into the music. At the same time, the sonic profile hides some of the overproduced and over-equalized material that tries to compensate for bad audio gear. See car stereo or Bluetooth speakers or sound bars. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tom Martin, executive publisher of The Absolute Sound and a reviewer here on the TAS YouTube channel. I'd like to invite you to take advantage of a special offer that we have. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter simply by entering your email address either in the form you'll find on screen, or you can click on the link in the show notes below and enter your email address. Twice a week, actually, we will send you audio reviews, written reviews that you won't find here on YouTube, music reviews, and our famous Editor's Choice and Product of the Year awards. This allows you to find the best equipment in audio as well as read our extensive and authoritative review coverage of hundreds of audio products. We would enjoy having you as subscribers. And now back to the show. Now let's talk about some listening examples. If you listen to St. Vincent's All Born Screaming, you'll hear solid bass, but with a bit more overtone emphasis and a bit less fundamental than I think you might hear live. Well, who knows what the mixing guy would do live, but in principle. I heard a similar effect on Dua Lipa's Radical Optimism. The track seemed dancey and engaging, but if you start listening to the instruments, the upper bass is somewhat emphasized. At the same time, I hear a different deviation from neutrality on Taylor Swift's Tortured Poets department. Presumably, this album has all that modern production and budget can buy, and it sounds pretty good on a fancy stereo system. With the D7000, it sounds just slightly dull or muted. I think that this is because the D7000 has a slightly recessed upper mid-range balance, and as it turns out, Taylor Swift albums are closer to neutral balance than you might guess. Put on something mixed a bit hotter, like Slater-Kenny, and the D7000 does a nice job keeping the sound from drilling holes in your ears while preserving the raw energy of the whole thing, and there's a lot of raw energy in Slater-Kenny. I listened to some classical material from Daniel Trifonov and the Eben Quartet and the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and with all of these, I was impressed with the combination of clarity and really tonal beauty wrought by the D7000. I did feel that smaller ensembles worked a bit better, but classical is hard to make both enjoyable and realistic, and the D7000, despite Final's protestations, might be your cup of tea if you love classical. It offers a transparency together with a tonal balance that is engaging rather than fatiguing. In the end, I concluded that the D7000 does some mild tone shaping that in frequency response terms might be perceived like you can see on this graph. This is somewhat similar to what I heard with the Focal Utopias. There are differences, of course. The Finals have a touch more mid-bass, for example, and the general slope of the D7000 response curve is slightly more tilted. And I think the response curve is somewhat more smooth than what you would find on the Utopias. Like the Maze Empyrean 2, I also appreciated that the D7000 didn't have much trouble with the treble of the Harman curve. So distracting splashiness or tiz was well moderated or maybe even non-existent. That's a rare event. Let me just step back a second and talk about a macro versus micro perspective, which might be a way of thinking about why these headphones excel, or maybe for you don't excel. These are very enjoyable headphones for music lovers. But if you get somewhat worked up about specific deviations from neutrality, and if you pay attention to the tone and definition of individual instruments, these might not be for you. Though note that most headphones are much farther from neutral than these. On the other hand, if you place the ability to play a wide variety of music in an enjoyable way as a top priority, and if you want the feeling that the whole track sounds right, there's that macro level, when you're looking at the band or the orchestra, the D7000 does a great job of delivering across the many mixing and mastering flavors that you'll find. And, as you probably know, in the world of music, you're going to find a lot of different mixing and mastering flavors, both those from the 60s versus the 80s versus the 2000s, but also individual engineers just do different things. So, the D7000 at the end is a winner for people who like to listen at the macro level. I hope you've enjoyed this review of the Final D7000 headphones. For more coverage of the best audio products, we invite you to subscribe to our weekly newsletters. They're free, so it really is a smart and very easy move. You'll find a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.